And again, my name is BG Howard, and I'm based in Jacksonville, Florida, United States. Um, this novel, Family Revised Edition, Family Ties Thicker Than Blood, is actually a revision of my first title. The first title by name, Family Ties Thicker Than Blood. And I wrote this first novel in 2020. It was actually after I launched the novel in 2020 that I realized I didn't know what I was doing. So I took 2 years and went back to research how to actually write a novel. Um, and in so doing, I realized there were a lot of things that I left out, neglected, and simply didn't know. But it worked out because earnestly reading the novel, reading the first version of the novel, it would not become readily apparent that I had not included these aspects because you're just reading a good book. But in any case, when I went back and I did the research, it took me a couple of years to research and revise the novel. Ergo, the current title, revised edition, Family Ties Thicker Than Blood. Um, oof, what prompted me to write? I was previously self-employed. I owned a couple of businesses, and oof, this part's a little difficult for me. In 2001, I suffered a severe accident, and it resulted with me being in a coma for 7 months. The injuries were so extensive that I required 8+ years of rehabilitative therapy and all the things that doctors put you through. In actuality, the doctors have said that I will be in a perpetual state of rehabilitation for the rest of my life. Um, I'm tasked with a stutter, an obvious limp, or I call it a waddle, um, and other issues with which I contend on a daily basis. But nonetheless, I'm thankful for life, and I do my best to live my life as normally as possible. With that being said, in initially in 2000 and in 2020, I had this nagging urge to write, and I didn't know what it was. This idea, it kept coming into my mind, and I went from working. I had, like I said, I had two companies. I went from working 140, 150 hours a week to crickets, and it honestly, was very hard on my psyche. Um, so this idea would not go away. So I simply sat down at the computer one day. I sat at the computer. I opened a Word document, and I just started typing. A lot of people say, they read the book and they're thinking it was all mapped out, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. In actuality, I just wrote what I wrote to quieten the noises inside my head. So um, it took me about a year and a half, 2 years to script the first novel. Um, Again, it was just a matter of me sitting down at the computer every day and typing what came. Not until I researched how to write a novel did I learn, come to understand that according to standard, you're supposed to map out every detail of every aspect of the novel, including the characters, the names, descriptions, backstory, and so on and so forth. But that's not how it came. It just came to me, organically. Every day I just sat at the computer and I'd say, okay, Lord, here I am. What do you have for me? And I just, went back to that Word document and typed what came. So anyway, it took me about a year and a half, 2 years to finish the novel. but I didn't know what I had done. I didn't know what it was. I had never intended to write a novel. So I just filed it away on the computer. And fast forward, wow, 8 years. 8 years later, in the interim, I had met, my now wife. Her name is Sandra. Uh, we had gone to Massachusetts on a moment's notice, and we intended to be there for 2 weeks. In actuality, we stayed there for a little more than 2 months. So in the time that we were there, she comes to me one day and she says, "I'm bored." And I said, "Okay." And she said, the topic came up, and she reminded me that I had written a book. And I said, I don't even, my computer hard drive had crashed a couple of times. So I didn't even know where the information was. But to long story short, I contacted the gentleman back in Jacksonville. He's the owner of the computer shop where all the work is done on my computer. And I asked him, I said, if my hard drive crashed, how do I retrieve the information? And he said, you don't. Once the hard drive crashes, the information is gone. But he had done me a favor, a huge favor. And he backed up everything from the 3 hard drives that had crashed, and he put them into a file on my computer, which I was so thankful. So I went and I found the information. I copied it to a flash drive, and I gave it to her. And she comes back a few days later, and she said, "You got to do something with this." And I said, "Do something with what?" She said, "The manuscript. It's very good." So I was like, in no position to assess the quality of the manuscript. I just written it. So anyway, we came back from Massachusetts. I did not want the novel as it was to speak of my life now. So I didn't change anything. I just went back and added. I term it, I added meat to the bones. So I finished the novel, and a year, 2 years later, it's published. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. So once I researched how to write a novel, I went back and I revised it. So the revised edition came out last year, actually, April and May of last year, of 2022. It's more, I feel in my heart that it's more complete. It tells the full story, and basically filled in some blanks that I had left in the first edition of the novel. But the novel, the revised edition, Family Ties Thicker Than Blood, is it's out now. It's available on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Goodreads.com, all the major platforms. And you can also order it directly from me. If you want it signed, I would be more than happy to do that. You can access me and all things BG Howard by going to www.author.bghoward.com. That's where you find me and all things me, information about myself and the other novels. I have another novel, Family Ties 2, Blood Covenant, that I'm working on. I think I just finished the editing. I'm hopefully going to be able to launch that one the first week of December. But the story, Willie LeBeau, is a young man from South Georgia. He relocates to New York City as an aspiring model / actor. The things that people go to New York to do. By accident, he saves the life of a gentleman by the name of Oswald Jenkins, who coincidentally happens to be a key figure of an organized crime family. But you can't be in organized crime with a name like Oswald. So on the street, his name is Oz. So Willie saves Oz's life, and Oz kind of adopts him, so to speak, takes him under his wing, teaches him the ropes. Willie has had some experience on the streets, but he got out of it because there was a situation. I don't want to tell the story, but there was a situation with his best friend, and that kind of, it was a bad situation. So that kind of prompted him to get out of the game. But in New York, Again, he accidentally saves the life of Oswald Jenkins, or Oz, and Oz takes him under his wing. That doesn't fit too well with a gentleman by the name of Amp, or Anthony. Amp is the previous second in command, and Willie's moving into position kind of pushes him to the side. So with that, Amp is upset, obviously, and he teams up with another former protege by the name of Jerome. So Amp and Jerome team up and hatch this plan to take over Oz's territory. In the meantime, Willie is pretty much running things, so that puts him in direct opposition with Amp and Jerome. Things are a little further complicated when Willie starts dating NYPD officer Ernestina Lady. That adds a big complication to things. So Willie is an aspiring actor / model. He can't let Oz know this because Oz does not believe that models, actors are real people. In fact, his term is that they are unrealistic people who live unrealistic lives with unrealistic expectations. So that has to be a secret that Willie keeps from Oz, his mentor. But by the same token, his true art of living, he cannot disclose to Officer Lady because she's a police officer. And so that's the dynamic of the background of the story. So Willie has to keep secrets. Basically, his entire life is a secret. He encounters an elderly couple in New York by the name of Ed and Eunice, who happen to be from the South. Ed is from South Carolina, and Eunice is from a place not too far from where originally Willie hails, in South Georgia. So Ed and Eunice, they actually are from the South, but they meet in New York years before, and they've been married for 30 years. They have kids. They're all grown and out the house, but two of them, one by the name of he's Ed Jr., but they just call him Pumpkin for short. And then there's also their daughter, Cherish. She lives in New York. I'm sorry, she lives in California, but she seems to find her way back to New York on every occasion. So that's another dynamic that explores the paths of the family. And ergo the name of the title, Family Ties. So it deals with the coming of age of children, young adults in life, the challenges that they undergo while wrestling with the dynamics of relationships, everything concerning relationships from business to friendships to family to romantic interests. And speaking of romantic interests, one of the challenges for Willie is that he's a young man from South Georgia, and he has how do we say this politely, experiences, romantic experiences. One in the form of Natasha, his neighbor, who happens to be living with a man, but that does not deter her from finding her way to Willie's door. So it's a really interesting story. A lot of facets of life and living life. It involves what I consider it's a realistic take on it's a realistic take on a fictitious narrative that describes or defines the process of living life. I mean the growing up, the maturing, the experiences that people have. One of those being relationships, concerning the emotional aspect. But I think it's a very, very interesting take on life in general, the challenges that we all endure. So again, it's people ask me, there are people who know me though in the accident, as a result of the accident, I lost my memory. But my sister-in-law, she happens to be from New York. She's now a professor in California, but she read the novel and she said to me, "Are you sure you lost your memory? Because reading this book was like taking a tour of New York City." So it's a challenge because I don't remember living in New York. Interesting because some of the stuff that I guess subliminally, it came back to me. But at any rate, it's a very, very interesting read. Again, a realistic take on a fictitious story. And I think, everybody who's read it finds it very interesting. And I think you'll do the same. So reach out to me, www.authorbghoward.com. And I have to mention in closing, the original version, Family Ties Thicker Than Blood, was awarded I was awarded best fiction, best new author. I'm sorry, best new author. And then the revised edition, right now I received a nomination, yay, from the Distinguished Authors Guild. And right now I'm promoting that. We have the award ceremony is slated for November the 8th in Las Vegas. So Sandra and I have to make a trip to Las Vegas relatively soon. And you can support me by going to my website, contacting me directly. My email address, bg@authorbghoward.com. And if you'd like to have a signed copy of the novel, you contact me via email or on my website, and we'll make it happen. But again, I'd like to thank Mr. Sankofa and all my fellow authors again for the opportunity, and it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.